Hey, what's up, November 22 people? I'm here to help you with title number 4. Let's figure this out and let's get an A in TOK.
Get an A in TOK.
All right, so first I'm going to give you a bunch of ideas, breakdowns, approaches, and pieces of evidence here. But if you want even more help, I'm available to tutor you. We can get in touch. You can send me your papers and I'll look at it. You can get a hold of me at Fiverr.com. There are some links here in the description below. Fiverr.com/PatFreakinJones. That's me. My packages start at $25 and I can help you out with virtually anything non-math related that you're doing in the IB right now. I've helped people from all over the world. You'll see the map on the screen. But yeah, if you want some help, if you need extra help, if you want some stuff that is not me writing the paper for you, I love to help you out. Get a hold of me. But look at this. We're going to do some stuff for free. All right, so let's look at this. So first of all, title number 4 says this: why do we seek indisputable evidence when it is so often unattainable? Discussed with references to 2 areas of knowledge. So if we look here, here are a couple of my notes that I think are really important before I get to the evidence. If you want evidence, just skip ahead, that's fine. So first of all, but actually don't skip ahead because this is so important. I've already graded multiple drafts and this has been my biggest comment to people who might actually be failing. So check this out. Make sure that your paper is not a discussion of what is and isn't indisputable, or ideas that are disputable and ideas that are not indisputable. This is a why prompt, okay? And there needs to be an answer to the why in every paragraph, and especially for about 200 to about 250 words in the conclusion. So what you need to be talking about is, why do we seek indisputable evidence? So with every single example that you get, you are going to say, in this example, they sought indisputable evidence because. You can be thinking about, is seeking indisputable evidence, is that something about us? Are we just wired to seek that? Are we always going to do that? Is it natural to seek that? Some other things that you can think about is it sought more often in certain AOKs? If so, why? Why do, I think we would all agree with this, why do certain scientists seek indisputable evidence way more than in other AOKs? What are some things that happen as a result of indisputable evidence being found? That would be the why. We wanted this to happen, and so we sought the indisputable evidence. And then finally, there are many things that you can say to conclude this paper to answer the why. But think about a big answer to the why question as being 200 to about 250 words in your conclusion. But this is the most important thing. If you get nothing, you're only a couple minutes in the video, this is vital. Okay, the next thing, if you look in the prompt, it says often unobtainable. And you can focus on that a little bit on some, but it's not as important as the first part of the question. So acknowledge that that indisputable evidence is unattainable. It is often unattainable, and mention that. But I feel like if you're wanting to fully answer and develop this prompt, the focus on the why is much more important. All right, so whenever you're breaking down the prompt, it's good to see some assumptions here. There's a couple of assumptions. First of all, it assumes that indisputable evidence exists, and that's something that you can bring up. I'm not sure if I would develop that fully unless you've got this great example, but that is an assumption being made. And then it also assumes that we do seek indisputable evidence. And while this is an assumption, it's also totally true. We need that. I wouldn't comment it on much unless you have one sentence in the introduction that you wanted to say. But there are a couple of assumptions here, and those are interesting things to think about as well. Now, here's where things get really cool, exciting, and where you have an opportunity to get really unique. You can define what indisputable means. So you could say, in the terms of this, because I'm talking about the 2 sciences, here's how indisputable will be used to talk about why we seek indisputable evidence in the sciences. So for example, you could talk about empiricism. So I need to experience it. I need to have a personal relationship with this evidence. You could talk about consensus. So you could talk about everyone agrees, or a large amount of people agree, or certain knowledge authorities agree that this is true, therefore it is indisputable. You can talk about experiential, which is related to empiricism. And then you can also talk about things that scientists do to prove things. If scientists prove things in a certain way, then is it indisputable or not? So that's another way that you can play around with this prompt. Another one, and we're just really talking about their tests for truth here, is that we've agreed upon it. So the test of truth, the test of time. If something has been agreed upon for 500 years, for 1,000 years, does that mean it's indisputable? That could work too. And then finally, we might say that indisputable evidence is things that the experts agree on. So I'm not going to actually give evidence for the arts because I don't like the arts on this. But one example, I'm not to the examples yet, but one example is the film, oh yeah, The film Citizen Kane. Okay, you probably haven't seen it. If you do, you're a nerd. But all experts agree that Citizen Kane is the greatest American film of all time. The American Film Institute consistently ranks it the best film of all time. I find it boring. I can't stand it. But is it indisputable that it's the #1 film of all time, American film, if the experts always say it is? Do we care about the few people who say it's terrible if all of the experts agree that this film is good? I don't know. So if you want to, you could define indisputable this way by saying there is broad consensus, not with everyone, but just among the experts. So anyway, I would really suggest in your introduction defining just what indisputable evidence is in the confines of your paper. So use that definition to interact with the AOKs that you choose. And then the last thing that you can talk about, I think that this is pretty cool. I don't know where you put this in, but you could talk about this somewhere, is the difference between something that is well justified and something that is indisputable. What is the difference there? Think about something that there's great evidence for, but that is still indisputable. Why do people agree with that? Why do people disagree with that? But I'm getting off topic because remember, the first point is we're not talking about why something's indisputable, and we're not talking about what is indisputable. What we're talking about is why people seek it even when it's hard to find. So with that said, let me give you some good pieces of evidence that you can start, that I'm going to give you to get you started, and then you're going to take it and get rolling. Let's get to it. One thing that could really work, and I would probably do this if I were you, is talking about the AOKs of math as one of your AOK. And so things that you could talk about are things that you yourself in math class have proven. So formulas or axioms that are considered indisputable. Don't just say this is indisputable. Remember, instead say, here's why we sought this indisputable knowledge. You can think about what is the result of getting to this level of indisputable. Does it help answer the why? So think about, we use this, we agree that this is indisputable, but why? What did that accomplish? Then you can explore things about math that are disputable. Maybe imaginary numbers, unproven theories, problems that have been turned into contests, and think about why people are trying to solve those, even when indisputability may never be achieved. Now, let me give you something good here, but also I just want to give you a warning. So I see a lot of people using the Pythagorean theorem, both for the essays and for the exhibition, because it's something that, we all know and understand. We would say it's indisputable, although I've heard that there's this new field of math, like the anti-Pythagoras or something. Somebody wrote about that. That's cool. But we would all say that the Pythagorean theorem is indisputable, and so that can work. But at the same time, if you want to stand out, don't use that specific theorem, because many people are using that. Look in the reference pages in your textbooks. Think about what you've used and why you've used it, and use that as an example. So moving on to the natural sciences, think about what happens when something is considered indisputable. What happens? Could that answer the why? It's important here to remember not to describe the indisputable evidence, but rather explore why it was sought, maybe why it was being sought when we didn't know it was indisputable, and why it was sought when it was hard to attain. So you might think about, I was thinking about some indisputable stuff, the periodic table of elements. This is pretty indisputable. Again, why was it sought? And what was its effect? Because remember, we didn't know everything in it when it was first created. You can also, I think this would be a big one, you can talk about falsificationism. So think about beliefs in science that have been confirmed over and over again by people who are trying to falsify them. Why does that confirmation occur? And that's going to go into the human sciences as well, okay? So think about trying to prove things wrong, and then that leading to more indisputable evidence. And ultimately, though, you can think about something that isn't able to be proven indisputably, but why people are trying to figuring it out anyway. So you can think about things like quantum theory, string theory, and metaphysics. They could help you there, as those ideas will probably never be proven indisputably, but we still seek them. People still love talking about it, and it is still useful. So why is it still useful? How is it still useful? The best source for this would be Michio Kaku. He's got videos all over YouTube, and I'll put some in the links below. All of my resources here will be in the links below, so check those out. But he's cool. He's this cool old Asian guy with long hair. He's really fun to listen to. And then I'll provide a link for this as well. I read this literally yesterday. In England, there are a growing number of scientists who are disputing evolution as the way we know it, and starting to ask questions about how certain body parts that didn't exist before came to exist. So they're thinking when all organisms didn't have eyes, for example, what made the first eye? And so they're saying it's not a mutation because there was nothing to mutate. So where did it come from? So there are, most scientists disagree with this. But here is an example of people taking something that, at least in scientific circles, is mostly not disputed, but now they're disputing it. So why? Why have we sought this indisputable evidence? Why have we called it indisputable? And then now, why are we disputing it? Again, I'll put the link to that article at the bottom. Moving on to human sciences, I talk about this all the time, probably almost as much as Foot Soldier Birmingham, but there's this great thing called Mini Labs 2. And the reason that Mini Labs 2 is a great example, probably the greatest example in human sciences, is because this is where you can talk about indisputable evidence being unattainable. And why? So you can talk about why this study was done in the first place. This is a great example of people seeking indisputable evidence to strengthen or weaken the belief of an entire discipline in the human sciences. And so if we go from really squishy information like in psych, then we can go to the really hard information like economics. So we consider it to be the strongest or the most indisputable because it uses math and it uses formulas. So first of all, you can talk about that. If you Google mathiness, M-A-T-H-I-N-E-S-S in economics, check out those ideas. But then you can talk about whether or not indisputability can be found, and then how that connects to the why. So why are we seeking indisputability when we are explaining how economies work, when we're trying to describe how people behave? I'd select for this, I would not talk very generally. Pick one specific economic indicator or formula, focus on its development, why it was being made and used, and how indisputability connects with that. And then finally, I'm not going to talk about the arts, but I would really go for history here because if you look at history and we're not thinking about things that happened in the past, but how we study those things, there is a lot in the distant past, very far away, that is never going to be disputable. I'm sorry, that's always going to be disputable. So if we look at things in the recent past, there's going to be some things that are indisputable. Like nobody's ever going to dispute that Bill Clinton was the U.S. president in the 1990s. But at the same time, I'm sorry, and so that's because of technology. We have very many different things that can tell us what happened in the past. So think about things that you study in history that we can never be totally certain of. Things that happened 500 years ago, 600 years ago. You can pick almost anything that we don't have the technology now to record and ask, why are we still studying these things? Think about things before the photograph. We still study those things. But why? If we can't totally be certain, why are we studying it in the first place? Now, there's a million different answers, but that's why history is such a great thing to look at. So some of the things that you can think about would be Herodotus. I've mentioned him before. You can think about religious texts, but use them as a way of looking at history. You can look at national narratives and myths and other things that are totally important and meaningful, yet nowhere close to indisputable in their accuracy because of the lack of tools and primary sources and verification and different perspectives that we would normally say are required to consider something indisputable. So virtually nothing in history is indisputable unless we're talking about just the past couple hundred years, all right? So history would be great, and I think that answering the why aspect of that would make this the easiest. So I would definitely choose history for this, and then I would choose either one of the sciences or I would choose math. I wouldn't choose art for this as I'm not really sure what we're trying to be indisputable about. But if you got some ideas, hey, message me on Fiverr, get a hold of me there, put something down in the comments, let's help each other out. And then finally, if you want all of this stuff, there's going to be a link in the description to my website that will put all of the resources that I've mentioned here, and you can just download those. I didn't give you any ideas, I just gave you some starting points. So if you are still stuck, message me. I'll help you out. We can Zoom. I can provide feedback, provide criticism, give you a rubric, predict a grade. I'll help you out as much as I can. I just won't write it. And yeah, why don't you get to work? Don't slack off. Get started early. I hope TOK and the prompt number 4 sucks a little bit less than it did a few minutes ago. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.